What is up, JL Life? Modell here.
And me.
Today, we'll be moving Heathen up to 2.5 ton steering from RPM. I'm going to show you how it's done. Y'all, stay tuned.
Yeah.
All right, so here it is. A DragLink tie rod 2.5 ton aluminum steering. It comes with the tie rod ends for the tie rod ends for the DragLink. We bought the stabilizer bracket for the bar, and it comes with anti-roll spacers. One of the things I absolutely love about this steering, it's aluminum, so if it gets put under extreme pressure, it will bend back. And what's even better about it, if you manage to break the center aluminum parts, not the tie rod ends, lifetime warranty. You send it to them, they will send you a replacement free of charge. Fuck mint. And another awesome thing about this steering, when your ends go bad, they're only $80 to replace. So if you have not upgraded your steering, this video is going to be a little bit different because I'm taking off aftermarket steering, not stock steering. But the process will be relatively close to the same. So before we can get started installing all that sexiness, we need to take off the other one. Like I said, this is not stock, so it might be a little bit different. So the first thing you need to do is get your stabilizer out of the way. And of course we have the Synergy relocation brackets for the stabilizer, and we're planning on reusing this with the RPM, the bolt, not the clamp. We have cotter pins, but go ahead and take those out to access the castle nut. Now go ahead and get your impact on top and take off the castle nut. It is normal for tie rod ends to get stuck after you take off the nut. Now there's a couple ways you can do this to get it off. One, you can use a pickle fork. So this is a pickle fork. You just cram it in between your boot and the knuckle, and you just start wailing on the end with the hammer until it drops. That can be a real chore. After wailing on it with the hammer, you want to make sure you do have some threads on the end of your ball joint so it drops. It's not going to drop and hit you in the foot or damage your steering components. Because even if you're taking off stock, it's good to have spares in case you break something down the road and you're waiting for replacement parts. What I have found to be a much easier tool for this is this ball joint puller I got from Harbor Freight. Now, I did have to modify the end to make it wider because it was very narrow. Watch how easy this gets. Using this tool, it's really hard with these castle nuts just because the way it's all shaped together. You want to get the end on the bolt, and it's really hard when you have that much surface space. So we're not going to use that, but you're going to slide that in between the boot and the knuckle, and that goes on top of the bolt. And if you want to reuse your steering, just try your best not to tear the boot. You're pushing it in, push down on the boot and in with the puller. And get it as deep as you can. So from here, you just tighten that bolt. So before you start doing that, because we don't have the nut on there, get it all the way on, just make sure you're holding it or you have a bungee cord. Dropped it easy. And another reason I don't like using pickle forks is because it really jacks up your boots. And we plan on keeping this steering as a backup in case one of our steerings fails and we're waiting for new tie rod ends. We can just throw this in the meantime if needed. So you won't be able to get a socket on that. You're going to have to use a box wrench. In order to loosen this, it's going to be getting pushed to the rear of the Jeep. Using the puller, just be careful, nothing's holding it. We do have it propped up on the other side on the tie rod, so it shouldn't crush Misty. Stop. This isn't working. Oh, man. Well, as I was trying to readjust this for Misty, it popped off. I need to modify this so it doesn't do that again. Probably weld some plates on the side to hold the bolt in place. I may need a new one because I see a bunch of metal shavings.
Sorry, I broke your toy.
What we will do, since we got the drag link loose, just barely thread it on both ends just to kind of help hold it in place, and we'll work on getting the tie rod off next. Since Misty broke my tool, she's gonna have to pickle fork this off. So after you get on, you're gonna wanna thread on your nut, your castle nut. You wanna wedge that in. And be mindful of your rotor and your knuckle. You don't wanna be cramming it in. That's why it's important to check what you're doing. The pickle fork has reached the knuckle. This isn't gonna work. Gotta find a different way. Trying from a different angle, still no go.
Apparently, I'm not very good at mechanicking.
Tried to go back using my broken tool, wasn't working. Tried tapping the side of the knuckle with a hammer, wasn't working. Alright, so this one's being an absolute booger. We're gonna have to try other things. You wanna guess? Yeah, this didn't work either. I even got so desperate, I used penetrating oil. Misty even ran back to the store and bought another ball joint puller. I modified it, greased the hell out of it, and that didn't work. So I've been on this for far too long, and what you're about to see me do, I do not advise you doing, because if you do it this way, you will ruin your tie rod ends. This is an absolute last resort if you cannot get the steering to separate. So welling on the top of the tie rod end, just know that it is very likely you're going to mushroom the top of the stud, which will ultimately lead to it will not fit through the hole of the knuckle, which is fine. You just have to be prepared to deal with that as well. And once I get it to drop, I'm going to sever the stud so it will drop through. What has happened, it's mushroomed up top, so. Let me make this perfectly clear. This is not the way you do it, but it wasn't coming out. The hardest part of doing your steering is getting the old steering off. The rest of it's a breeze. The next thing you're going to want to do is to prep your tie rod ends. If you look at the bags, they are labeled which ones go to the tie rod, which these ones go to the tie rod, and it tells you left and right handed, and these ones are for the drag link and left and right. It's important you get the right sides, so don't just take them out and throw the bags away. So what you want to do is go ahead and start by taking off. In order to do that, we got to remove these spring clamps. Side, almost had it. Almost had it. There we go. Get a good grab and peel it off. Pull off the boot, and you're going to want to replace it with the anti-flop end, and it just pushes right on until it goes over the lip and it's flush. And be careful not to lose the Zerk fittings that are in the bags, so just don't rip the bag and throw it. So these anti-flop ends only go to the tie rod, not the drag link. Pop it off, put on the new one. So the next thing you want to do is get your jam nuts and thread it all the way on each one of your tie rod ends. The way this works is, you see I'm going backwards. One will be reverse thread, one will be regular thread, and that's so you can adjust the steering while it's still under the Jeep, all the way to the end. Do it to both sides. So after threading your jam nut all the way down, just get one of the bevel washers, put that on. And what you need to do before you put it into the tie rod, anti-seize. Nice generous coat. There we go. And if you look at the tie rod and the drag link, you'll notice one side has a cut, one side does not. The cut stands for the left-handed threads. Rotate it all the way down till you bottom it out. This part is important. And do the same with the other side. Anti-seize in a can, it really makes things a lot quicker and less messy. The left-handed threads, and again, bottom it out.
Ew, it's squishy.
All right. So even if it gets hard and there's threads showing, it's not bottomed out. Keep going. Remember, important.
Mo had to go to the store because we need 2 of these. So while he's gone, I'm going to go ahead and start setting up the drag link, which is going to be set up just the same as the tie rod was. Your cut side with the little marks is going to be your left-handed side, other your right. Take this guy, take off your cap. Yes, this one is the left-handed, anti-seize, jam nut. Guess I could have done the anti-seize after. I probably should have done it after. Take your beveled washer. Bloop. A little bit more of this again. Alright. Now the other side. Using this big guy for leverage is helpful.
More.
And that's how you might have to do it.
I wanted to be difficult. So you're probably sitting there watching this and going, I ain't gonna do all that work. Mo, I'm just gonna adjust it where it needs to be, not go through all of that man display. Well, the reason why that's important, because when you put this under the Jeep, you want to put it in while it's bottomed out. Once it's bottomed out, you want to extend it from the bottom out position. And the reason why this is important, because it ensures that the tie rod ends will be out equal space. There won't be any positive or negative, more threads out on this side, less threads out on this side. It's going to be consistent and it's going to be the same. That's why it is important to do it this way. The next thing you will want to do is measure your drag link and your tie rod, just to give you a good ballpark of where you should be. Now, the way you're going to measure is from center of tie rod to center to tie rod end. This is 40 inches, 15/16.
We are coming in at 61 7/16.
And just write those numbers down to refer to when you need them. One of the things I want to point out, another thing I like about this steering, is that at the end of the tie rod ends, it has either a fitting for a wrench, and on the more difficult side, it has an Allen key head. Now, why that is super important, in the event your tie rod ends get loose and you go to remove them and you're putting a wrench on them, if the ball joint, the tie rod end stud, is too loose, it'll spin when you're trying to get the nut off, and it will make your life a nightmare trying to get it off. With this, what's nice is while you're wrenching this off, you can put another wrench on top and hold it still while you're able to get it off. So the offset forged end goes into the knuckle side. We got under knuckle steering.
For now.
So the steering wheel will be very far off, obviously, because it's all the way in and we still need to extend it. But we're going to wait until we get these ends all squared away before we get to that. So the ends will be torqued down to 75 foot per pound. There we go. The drag link end that's connected to the pitman arm is not easy to do. You just gonna have to hand tool it with an open box wrench. This side also needs to be torqued down to 75, and torquing it down to the proper weight is important because it makes sure the boot seals and seats correctly. If you're wondering why the Allen key indent on top and not the stud you can grab with a wrench, there's not a lot of space here, so it needed to be shorter, and that's how this was accomplished. And if you are having your tie rods spin while you're trying to tighten them, like I said, the Allen key is for, you just put it on top. It's a size 6. Just get it to seat in, hold it, and go back to tightening. The reason why it was doing that is because it's a nylon lock washer. So, I mean, they're designed so once they go on, they don't back off. So, it was just gripping it well. There we go.
Woo! Show us that little contraption.
So, in order to get a torque wrench on it, you need a crow's foot, a size 21. I needed a small extension. Not everyone has crow's foots. If you don't have a crow's foot, don't sweat it. You can just do it with the wrench. Just give some good pull on it. Of course, don't over tighten, but good and tight. So the next thing we need to do is go ahead and center the steering wheel. You can see it needs to be adjusted. So in order to adjust the drag link, you're just going to get a big ass wrench. I have an 18-inch adjustable crescent. So what you're going to do is just start rotating the tie rod until you get your steering wheel straight. It could take some time because it is bottomed out. And again, that is important because it ensures that the thread extension on both sides is going to be equal. What I would suggest you to do is go off of the measurements that you took previously, going from stud to stud, and try to get it at the same spot. Of course, you can also just redo your alignment if you know what you're doing, which is what we're doing. However, if you are deciding to go off of your previous measurements, what I would suggest you do in this case is extend it to the same length that it was before, then fine-tune it from there. And of course, I do suggest getting a professional alignment done after installing any steering system. Now that we got the steering wheel where we need it to be, while the jam nuts aren't tightened down, you can actually adjust your tie rod ends to be level, not more crooked one way than the other. Now we can cinch down our jam nuts.
Give it some ugga-duggas.
You need 2 big old wrenches. And doing your best not to hold the tie rod down while you're doing it. There you go. Loosening one of the jam nuts, you'll be able to adjust the corresponding side tie rod end. Do your best to not rotate the ends while tightening. And the reason that's important, crooked ends lead to worn out boots and worn out ends faster. So if you're having issues keeping the tie rod ends centered while you're trying to tighten the jam nut onto the drag link, and the same will go for the tie rod, what you can do is hold the actual tie rod end with a wrench right here. As you can see, it's cut out to kind of hold a wrench. Hold it from here while you tighten the jam nut down, where it's good and tight. Then you can transition from the tie rod end to the drag link or the tie rod and the jam nut and tighten there nice and tight. So after getting the drag link all squared away, get your anti-flop spacers, throw them on here, and thread on the nuts. Get to the other side, pull your knuckle over. These will be torqued down to 75 foot-pounds. There you go. But you can. So at this point, we're just setting the toe. You can either extend it to the length that you had measured out previously, or use an alignment tool and reset it, but you want to be probably within 1/32 of an inch. Messing with jam nuts, sometimes they have the tendency of moving when you're trying to tighten one side, so you got to take extra care when doing them. So having 2 sets of hands would be beneficial. I'm kind of at the point where it just started to turn, so rotate that back. Sink the jam nut down on one side, go to the other, sink it down. Will help stop it from rotating as much. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold tie rod end, and I'm going to tighten the jam nut from here. I'm going to give Misty the second Ugga wrench, and she's going to be holding on the opposite side on the tie rod end just to help hold it in place, because if this starts to move, you're going to mess with your toe, and that your toe is only adjusted, you know, very, very small. A little bit of a turn can go a long way doing the wrong thing. Hold and start making your tightens, and you got no movements.
It's trying.
Oh yeah. Going to the other side. I'm gonna have Misty do the same thing, even though at the second part it shouldn't move, but I don't want to keep messing with it. So boom. The last bit we need to do is the steering stabilizer clamp. We are going with the steering stabilizer clamp from RPM. For the other end, we are using the track bar stabilizer relocation bolt that extends off of the track bar. That's what they suggest is actually the easiest way of doing this. And of course, we already had the bracket to begin with, so the linkage is being absolute thick. I want to be able to fit this on otherwise. So get that on first. What you want to do is turn the steering wheel hard driver. Then you get your stabilizer bracket. Then make sure it's positioned in a spot that's going to minimize any sort of rubbing, giving it the most clearance. Putting on the bottom of the clamp, I'm going to use a little bit of blue thread lock. Blue, not red. Now just go through and tighten all 6 bolts on the bottom and the 2 bolts holding the stabilizer to the axle and the tie rod, and you're done. And don't forget the Zerk fittings. It's important. Keeps crap out of your ends and allows you to grease it. Snug, not super tight. And they'll go in the bottom of all 4. Before we put the tires on, we just need to make sure we're going to get clearance and the stabilizer is going to have space to travel. So I'm going to go and have Misty go inside, turn the steering wheel. I'm going to watch everything down here. Go ahead and fully cycle left and right. Okay, we are clear. Yes, that is clearing. Okay, and the other way. Clear. All right, well, let's get the tires back on, things picked up, and we'll wrap this video up. So we've had it in Heathen for about 3 weeks now. I even test drove it. Damn, it's really tight.
It feels really nice.
It's a really big improvement over what we had previously. Granted, I know it's new, but it feels really stiff.
Not like stiff like you can't drive, but like solid.
It felt good. So one thing I do want to point out, this right here, so that right there is actually normal. So if you do get this kit and you have this issue, don't fret. This system is actually designed to flex really well. It's actually supposed to accommodate 16 inches of travel, which is really a lot for a daily driver.
A bonus, your ends are not super pricey. $80.
I'm not gonna lie, when my steering ends go out, the fact that they cost almost $200 an end, I'm probably just going to switch to this kit. Another awesome thing about RPM, they actually have fantastic customer service. One thing I would recommend if you are getting steering, because steering actually changes a lot with whatever setup that you have, depending on the lift, what you have up front. you would think it'd be simple, but there's more that goes into it. And if you don't know what you're looking for, just give him a call and he will walk you through.
Help you.
He'll walk you through what you need. Make sure you get set up with the correct setup.
A flip kit is also available.
Yes, they also do have flip kits. Of course, they recommend it for 4 inches and higher. We're at 3.5 inches, so we haven't done the flip kit. But when we need the flip kit, we just go and buy it.
Order it. I've been plagued by bump steer. It's not all the time, but we have some pretty bad areas of road where the bumps are really jarring, and I would hit them even like after, like with the new track bar, everything, it would still do a slight and I'm like, oh, not the wobbles again. It is gone now. It is really good.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something.
Yes.
But remember to
Like, comment, subscribe, and share.
stay tuned for the next one, y'all. Keep it easy.